everyone. For this lesson, we are going to be talking about multiplicative relationships. I'm going to go through what that means. I'm going to give you some examples, and then you can use it on your assignment. Before we dive into some of the newer stuff that we're going to be going over, I want to go back to what we learned about when we covered ratios. And so I'm going to give you this example, and then that'll lead into what we're going to be talking about. So let's say there's an event planner who is organizing a banquet, and she wants to know how many chairs she will need to set up for the event. And the ratio that we have, it says that each table can have 6 chairs around it. So the ratio of tables to chairs would be 1 table for every 6 chairs. What we want to figure out is how many people can attend the banquet if she has a total of 8 tables. What I want to do is fill out this table over here using the ratio that we have, and then that'll lead into what we're going to do for this assignment today. So using the ratio, we can fill out the table by looking at how many tables there are and how many chairs there are for each table. So for example, for the very first one, if I have 1 table, that means I'm going to have 6 chairs. Now if I have 2 tables, that means I'm going to have these 6 chairs and these 6 chairs, which will give me 12 chairs. Now let's say I have 3 tables, I have these 3 groups of 6, that'll give me 18 chairs. Now I've got 4 tables, again 4 groups of 6, that'll give me 24 chairs. If you notice the pattern, every time you add a table, you add 6 chairs. So it increases by a multiple of 6. So if you had 5 tables, you would have 30 chairs. If you had 6 tables, you would have 36 chairs. 7 tables would give you 42 chairs. And 8 tables would give you 48 chairs, which means that 48 people could attend this banquet because that's how many chairs there are, because we want to assume that everybody can have a place to sit. So when we were going through that, I hope you noticed that, like I said, each time we increased the tables by 1, the chairs increased by a multiple of 6. So it went from 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36. The relationship here is called a multiplicative relationship. And a multiplicative relationship describes how 2 numbers relate to each other by multiplication. So the process that we used whenever we were seeing how many chairs we could have depending on how many tables we had was we multiplied. Now I wrote it like this specifically because that's how you're going to be expected to write it in 7th and 8th grade and in high school eventually. So I want you to get used to writing it like that. Remember, whenever you have a number on the outside and then you have parentheses around another number, that means multiplication. So this means 1 times 6 equals 6, 2 times 6 equals 12, and so on and so forth. Now we can represent these multiplicative relationships using equations, tables, and graphs. We already represented it using tables, and we're going to talk about how to use it for equations, and then you can use that for graphing as well. So the equation form of a multiplicative relationship can be written like this. Y equals A times X. Make sure you write this down in your notes. Y represents the output value, X represents the input value, and A represents the multiplier. Make sure you write that down in your notes. Now, before you give me this look and say, I don't get it, I've never seen that before, it doesn't make any sense, let me explain. Okay? So the input value, what X is what gets put into the equation so we can determine the output value Y. We are trying to solve for Y. With multiplicative equations, A always remains the same in order for the relationship to be true. This is how I want you to think about it. The output depends on what the input is. So for our example from the banquet, the input value was the number of tables, so how many tables we set up, and the output was the number of chairs that would go with those tables. Okay? And A, in this case, would have been 6 because every time that you increased by 1 table, you increased by 6 chairs. So in that case, A would be 6. I'm going to give you a couple of examples so you can see the relationship and see how the equations form, and then that'll help you with the assignment that you're working on today. So don't forget, A is our multiplier, so that's whatever we're multiplying by. X is the values that we're going to put into the equation, and Y is going to be what we're solving for, the output. So here's our first scenario. We have, we're looking for the total cost of donuts, and it depends on how many donuts you buy, which is $2 per donut. So our input would be the number of donuts that we buy, and our output would be our total cost. And the reason that's why it's the way it is you can't just spend $20 on donuts and then get however many donuts you want. That's not how it works. The amount that you spend depends on how many donuts you buy. You buy less donuts, you're not going to spend as much, or if you buy a lot of donuts, you're going to spend more. But the cost depends on how many donuts you buy. That's why that is the output. So if we're putting it in our equation, y equals a times x, and just to let you know, you can write it like this, even though there's nothing there. There's an invisible multiplication sign right there. Whenever you have a variable, that's what these are called, it represents multiplication. So this is how you would write it. So the total cost, whatever we're trying to figure out, is the $2, because that's how much it costs per donut, times the number of donuts you buy. So that would be y equals 2x. Here's an example. Let's say you buy 12 donuts. We're trying to figure out how much you're spending when you buy 12 donuts. So you would write it as y equals 2x. Remember, y is your total cost that you're trying to figure out. The 12 donuts, that's your input. That's the value that you're putting in, because that is what can change. You could buy 10 donuts, you could buy 200 donuts. Right now we're buying 12 donuts. So that's what we're going to put into the equation. And now we can do 2 times 12, and 2 times 12 will give us 24. So that means that buying 12 donuts would cost us $24. All right, next example. Let's say the total number of balloons that you buy depends on how many packages of balloons that you buy. So let's say balloons come in a package of 18 balloons in every package. So you can't just get 7 balloons. You have to buy them in a package of 18. So what we want to figure out is how many total balloons we would get depending on the number of packages we buy. So the input is the number of packages we buy. The output would be the total number of balloons. And we can solve that. So we can solve for the total number of balloons we would get by having that 18 balloons per package times the number of packages we buy. So our equation would be y equals 18x. So if you buy 1 package of balloons, you're going to get 18 balloons. If you buy 2 packages of balloons, you're going to get 2 times 18, which is 36 balloons. Here's another example. So let's say we bought 4 packages of balloons. We use our equation here, y equals 18x, and we plug in that 4, because that's our input, into where x is. And so now we know that our total cost is going to, or the total number of balloons is going to be whatever 18 times 4 is. Well, 18 times 4 is 72. So when you buy 4 packages of balloons, you're going to get a total of 72 balloons. All right, and with our last example, let's say you are earning money from a job that you work at, and the amount of money that you earn at your job depends on how many hours you work. You don't, and the reason that the input is the number of hours you worked and the output is the total amount of money you earn is because your boss wouldn't just give you $100 and say, hey, work however many hours you want. That's not how it works. The amount of money you earn depends on how many hours you put in. So that's why the number of hours is your input and the amount you earn is the output. Okay? So we can write our equation as the total amount earned is the $13.50 per hour. That's how much money you make every hour. And multiply that, times that by the number of hours you worked. So our equation can be y equals 13.50x. So for example, let's say you worked 20 hours. We're going to use our equation y equals 13.5x. And we're going to plug in that 20. That's what's being inputted into the equation. And we're going to multiply $13.5 times the 20 hours that you worked. And that'll give us 270. So that means that if you work for 20 hours, you're going to earn $270. Please feel free to go back and use these examples when you're doing your work today. I hope this helps, and if you have any other questions, please let us know.